Welcome to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can also find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The information shared on this program is informational and should not be considered therapy. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality and may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer Podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening. Welcome, everybody, to the Natasha Helfer Podcast, where we go after shame anywhere we can get it. And I'm super excited to have our guest today, which I will introduce here in a minute. Just a few updates of what's happening in my life and my group practice, Symmetry Counseling. We offer a free faith transition support group for anyone leaving high demand religions, and we can do that both online and in person. The in-person event is only once a month, and online it's every week. So for more information on that, check out my group practice website at simcounseling.com. And I also have a Reclaiming Female Sexuality one-day retreat called Igniting Your Inner Fire. It sounds sexy already. And that's going to be on May 9th. And I will link all the details in the show notes. That is Mother's Day weekend. But we were thinking maybe you need a day on your own on Mother's Day weekend. That's how I would want to spend one day at least that weekend. So that's what we were thinking. And then for those of you who haven't checked me out on YouTube yet, you can find me there as the Sex Mormon Therapist with the emphasis on X. And that gives you a lot of just kind of comprehensive sexual education. So give me a like there and a subscription if you don't mind. And for anything else you want to know about me, you can go to natashahelfer.com. Okay, without any further ado, Mellissa Perry Hill is joining me today. And I have really loved getting to know Mellissa, mainly through our association, through the Mormon Mental Health Association, and some presentations she's given that I've really enjoyed hearing her speak. She's a licensed professional counselor. She's an approved clinical supervisor based in Arizona. She owns and operates a practice called Inner Compass Counseling and Consultation, and can serve clients both in Arizona and Utah through both virtual and in-person care. And her work centers, similarly to mine, on supporting individuals and couples healing from religious trauma, spiritual abuse, faith transitions, and with particular experience working with those impacted by high control religious systems, including Mormonism. She integrates EMDR, internal family systems, DBT, narrative therapy, all with an emphasis on nervous system regulation and identity reconstruction, values-based living, and restoring internal authority after spiritual harm. She is the author of the Faith Transitions Journal, which is a self-published reflective resource, which I believe we'll link to, yes, because you have that information for us, created to support individuals processing disaffiliation, grief, and meaning-making after leaving religion. She's also developed and facilitated curricula and group experiences for local faith transition and religious trauma communities, and regularly provides consultation, supervision, and education for clinicians working in the area. So if you're interested in Melissa's work, we'll have lots of ways to get in touch with her as well. She's been a guest on numerous podcasts and professional conversations focused on all of these items, and she maintains an active online presence through her Instagram platform at Mellissa Perry Therapy. She has great content, so follow her there as well. She's certified as a sex-informed professional and works with couples navigating intimacy, attachment, and relational repair. Tell me a little bit right off the bat, how do you differentiate between sex-informed, which I appreciate you putting that, versus a sex therapist who's been through the whole certification process through ASEC?
Absolutely. I took a course for certification, which is nothing compared to what a sex therapist is going to to do. So I am informed, meaning that I will give you some good basic care. And then for anything out of my scope, I refer out to different ASECT fully certified therapists like yourself, Natasha. And yeah, it was a great experience. Tammy Nelson, I believe.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Tammy Nelson. Yeah, she's great. And
Yeah.
I think the person I work for, Stephanie Bueller, does a similar kind of like smaller, like if you don't want to go through the whole process,
Hmm.
but here's like a good chunk of information that would help you be informed as a clinician. And I love that you said 200 hours because that is also a lot. That is not like a 3 hour CE, that we go and get a little
Yeah.
something something. So I like to just share that to let people know how much training goes into
Yeah.
somebody even who just calls themselves sex informed, and even those who call
Hmm.
themselves sex therapists. And there aren't a lot of
Hmm.
places that regulate that. So people can call themselves these things without really having the training. So just be really careful who you're going to see and what kinds of training they've actually had. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And my training was really focused on couples as well.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, good. Good. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of however much you're willing, a little bit of your own personal background and story, how you come to be interested in these topics. And then I know you have 3 topics in particular that we were going to address today.
okay. Well, I'm so excited to be talking to you, Natasha. I have questions for you.
Okay,
I
we
feel
can
like
do that too.
I always have like proximity to you, but I never ever have you one on one. I am just elated to have you one on one right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, my story starts out, in Mormonism, but in a really kind of Orthodox Mormon family. And I had my rebel phase as a teenager, but then I got pulled in by the Pioneer Trek when I was
Mhm.
17
Wow.
and ended up changing my whole plan after the Pioneer Trek, where I felt the spirit so strongly, and I decided to live up to my pioneer ancestors' legacy and change all of my plans, change my sorority rushing, everything that I had going on, and go to BYU, Idaho
Oh, wow.
instead. But I wasn't accepted into BYU, Idaho. So I took night classes and until I was accepted there in Rexburg.
Wow.
And then I ended up married by the time I left, 5 months pregnant by the time I graduated. Um, and then fast forward 10 years down the road, I was getting a divorce and starting my master's and going through all of that. And this is where I'm fuzzy because you came into my atmosphere at that point, into my orbit. But I can't remember what year everything happened with you in the church because it's pivotal. I feel like I was learning so much and deconstructing so much,
Mhm.
and I was watching you go through that. And that was a very interesting intersection. So what year was it when that all blew up?
Yeah, when I was getting a lot of national attention from my excommunication, that was the spring of 2021.
Wow, it's
Yeah,
later than I thought.
yeah. But I
Okay.
had been fairly active, I think publicly for a good decade before that, as far as my blog and forming the Mormon Mental Health Association and, writing op-eds in the Salt Lake Tribune and of course presenting at conferences where we probably, intersected as well. And so,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
and running
That makes sense.
podcasts, like I ran Mormon
Hmm.
Sex Info back then and would often be on Mormon Stories with John
Yeah.
Bolen. So,
Okay. And I started listening to John's stuff in like 2017 or 2018. So
yeah,
that
so
would
we
make
would have
sense.
definitely come across a lot of the content that we came across because we talked a lot about faith transitions, about porn addiction not being a real thing, about
Hmm.
masturbation and sexual shame.
Hmm.
A lot of those interviews were with him.
Which was crazy because I was processing a marriage that had all of the Mormon trauma, all of the things.
Mhm.
And I was like, what just happened? What just happened? Um, and I was, getting my first ever human sexuality courses taken in my whole life,
Mhm.
ever. And I was like, hold on. Um, and then I was graduating and in my internship 2021.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I mean, I look up to you so much. I love your work. And yeah,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
That's really lovely. And for those of you who don't know what a pioneer trek is, so as Mellissa has has alluded to, there were this group of people called the Mormon pioneers back in the 1800s, yes, who crossed the plains. And so it is kind of a ritual for the young men and women, usually in the ages of 14 to 18. That's about when they go, some of them go on these treks that are kind of a recreation of what their ancestors would have gone through. I went on a similar trek when I was, I think, about 15. And yeah, and I don't know, there's some beauty to it. There's also a lot of problems with the treks and a lot of different feelings about what these treks bring out for a lot of people, including, of course, our brown and black members who do not have
Oh my goodness.
necessarily that background, has it kind of completely ignores, their beginnings in our church community. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I look back at that experience and I'm like, wow, that was very unethical, undue influence. I remember we were eating like flour and water
Mm-hmm.
mixed together, carrying a bucket, pulling the hand cart. It was such an interesting time in my life where it was new horizons everywhere, right? College, leaving my parents' house, and I really feel, and I had such a strong spiritual experience, but I was also hungry, tired, sleeping on the dirt, like, and at an intersection, a time in my life of transition where I was super vulnerable. So it's interesting. Before that, like I said, I kind of had my rebel phase, but I feel like my rebel phase was very authentic to me. It wasn't a rebel phase, it was just a rebel phase to Mormonism. It was adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
And then I when it kind of went backwards and got sucked into a vortex for about a decade. And then I woke up and I've come back home. So it's nice. But
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all of that and sharing your vulnerability with us. You sent me some thoughts. There's so many different topics anytime we talk about faith deconstruction because it affects so many aspects of any person's life. And you kind of came up with three distinct areas. So I'm thinking, okay, for a 1 hour time together, I think we can do this. I think we can talk about these three different distinct things, at least a little bit. And because there's about 500 things we could talk about. So
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
say them all at once. So one is vilifying pleasure, that's a theme in high demand religions. Another one is vilifying assertiveness. So, how that is seen through a high demand religious lens. And also, how in a lot of ways we're vilifying secure attachment to self. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's our little, kind of preview. And now we're going to do a deeper dive. And I think these are three really great things for you to have kind of thought through and put together. So let's start with vilifying pleasure. And in your first kind of initial sentence is focused primarily on female sexuality, although I do think there's quite a bit of this that happens for males as well. But how demonizing female sexuality creates submissive abandonment of one's own power. So that's a very powerful statement. How demonizing female sexuality creates submissive abandonment of one's own power. So let's start there. Tell me more. What are you thinking about when you wrote that?
I'm thinking about the embodiment of like presence, like sitting with ourselves right before I came on. I had my hands on my heart and I was making sure that I was embodied, in my body, experiencing whatever was here. And I think as we vilify pleasure, whether that's with, what we eat, compliments that we receive, nourishment through connection and attachment, or sex, uh, we we become disconnected from our experience of being in our bodies. So it feels very like somatic to me, but when we vilify something that feels good, it seems like there's an automatic detachment from self that I see as a clinician. And also that I can look back on in the story that we're talking about growing up, and that if something is bad and evil and you push it away, and it keeps coming up over and over and over again, which like eating good food, right? Or enjoying enjoying a texture, something as simple as enjoying a texture, or enjoying like what you look like in the mirror, or touching your own body. None of these things were acceptable. In fact, they were scary.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the compliments one is kind of done through the framing of pride. Like you don't want to be prideful, so therefore you shouldn't, be boastful. And it's also this kind of idea of giving the credit to somebody completely else, which is God, for anything good that is happening in your life. But it's also interesting how we don't give credit for the bad things that are happening in our life to God. That we are supposed to take credit for ourselves, right? And so
Yeah.
take credit for the bad things, especially if you're not praying enough, fasting enough, going to church enough, right? You're probably getting punished. And even when there's not necessarily a punishment, it's not God's fault. It's just kind of the way the world works. And you're supposed to go through these trials and things. But anything good that you've done, by all means, give that credit to God.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. And you can't get it right because you want to give credit to God if you did something good. And if something wrong happens, right? Like you said, you can't say that was, you have to actually look inward and say, what did I do wrong for the bad thing that happened to me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So right off the bat, that's I mean, you think about a toddler, think about like at the purest form of pleasure, and a little toddler who does something for the first time, and they're kind of confused about it. Like they're taking their first steps. They're not really thinking about pleasure. They're doing something new. But then they look up to the reaction of all the people around them who are like, yeah, hopefully there's people around them going, oh, look at you, cute, darling baby, taking your first steps. And then you see the pleasure in that baby's face, right? The joy that they are being seen and given credit for that thing. And it doesn't take very long between the ages of 2 and 5, 2 and 7, that we're shutting that down big time. Like, don't take credit anymore.
There's too much freedom. There's too much freedom in that. Too much freedom in embodying what feels good and leaning into it. And maybe it's because we're trying to keep our children obedient. Maybe it's because we are projecting our own shame onto our kids, right? We're embarrassed or we're fearful or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm having multiple sessions come to mind right now, EMDR, where we're going back and that's the time frame, right? Like I was having so much fun and then this happened. Don't touch that. That's yucky. Don't icky, right? Or don't be that loud. Don't celebrate that loudly. Don't upset your mother.
Don't bring attention to yourself. Like that's a bad thing. Yeah, I remember looking up one time the actual definition of hedonism, and it was really as simple as the value of pleasure. When I thought hedonism was something similar to Satanism or something, like it sounded like this horrific word. And so I was like, well, what is it to be hedonistic? And it basically just said enjoying pleasure. And I'm like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. We really are not okay with this. And as a sex therapist, usually where I begin with a lot of people who have really been, I call it like an erotic lobotomy, they've been lobotomized erotically. Yep. We just start with pleasure in the simplest of forms, like something like taking a nap. Sleep is another one that we get highly criticized about in our capitalistic United States culture. It's not even really a religious thing, although I think it has religious Christian components to it, of this idea that you're supposed to self-sacrifice for the community, for productivity's sake, for everything. So even just basic rest is too pleasurable for us to handle. So how in the heck are we supposed to have orgasmic sex if we can't even take a nap?
Right. And how are we going to have orgasmic sex if we can't be in our own body because it doesn't feel safe? Yeah, it's wild. I still have moments in my life now where I'm like, whoa, is it really okay for me to like center myself in my life, for me to like make my life about me and also my kids and also everything else, but like it's for me.
Mhm.
It's for me. I think I've really kind of reconstructed that whole idea because I really do feel like my life is for me. It's a gift for me. And usually that makes things better, not worse, in terms of relationships and everything. I mean, from professional opportunities to um, play.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
but we weren't taught that. We were not taught that.
it's like we took the advice for sociopaths that, hey, maybe you should focus on other people and just apply it to everyone who is actually wired to be too focused on
Hmm.
other people because we all
Hmm.
want to be part of the group so desperately. And
Absolutely.
yeah, that was a big mistake.
Yeah, I feel like so many times I'm helping women become a little bit more narcissistic because they're not they're not on that spectrum enough. We need more of it. We need to center ourselves a little bit more because we can't even eat a brownie without feeling guilty and calling ourselves bad. You know, or go on a girls' night or say maybe it's okay for your toddler to stay with dad to go do that thing that you need to do or that thing that you want to do for fun. But yeah, like you said, with men as well, this idea that anything that feels good is bad and wrong creates havoc, systemic havoc. It seems like there was such, and you've seen this, and I know you've talked about this for years, but such a panic around porn that it created this massive issue. Um, and I still, you know, I love my job. I love sitting with men and being like, you know, I think you're okay. Like, it's all right. You know, sometimes sexual imagery, let's talk about how long sexual imagery has been around. Let's
Mhm.
talk about what an addiction is. Let's
Mhm.
talk about how many people in the 5 years of practice that I have ever felt were out of my scope or that I have ever referred out for like an actual something that felt out of control to the point where I didn't, you know, have the tools, um, where I would refer to someone who had your credentials. Not very many.
Mhm.
Because all it takes is I'm seen, I'm safe, I'm good, I can repair some connections, I can embody pleasure and not be ashamed of it, and the compulsivity aspect kind of just goes away.
It is mind blowing how we have in the potentially innocent intention of improving people's lives. I do like to give systems the benefit of the doubt, but assuming that's the intention is to benefit people's lives, how often the strategies actually worsen everything, increase anxiety, increase scrupulosity, increase perfectionism, right? And increase guilt. Can you talk a little bit about this intersection between guilt and pleasure and how
Mm.
that's almost a bit like oil and vinegar?
Oh, yes. Right. How do
Like
you
oil and vinegar together. Let's think of something else. Oil and water. How
Oh
about
wait, oil and vinegar is delicious. Let's get some good bread and some oil and vinegar and go for it. Um, Yeah, I see a lot. I see a lot of things that I do in my practice through an IFS lens, which is internal family systems. And I think very often with many of my clients, when they're able to engage that maybe that more erotic part of themselves, um, that free part that experiences pleasure, that part of themselves comes to the forefront, and then automatically guilt, that part of us pops right up, and they kind of intertwine, and things get really messy. Um, there's a lot of scrupulosity that comes with that. Yeah, it's messy. Those two parts, kind of building a relationship with guilt and building a relationship with pleasure and understanding that none of these parts of us are bad. They're all here for a reason. And guilt did have a purpose, and that was survival. Because if I feel really guilty about something, or that turns into shame, then maybe I won't do it. And maybe I'll be able to go participate in ordinances with my family. Maybe I'll make it to heaven with my family. Maybe I won't be the reason why my family isn't eternally safe. And I just want to say, Natasha, I love your optimism and your positivity about systems. I love that. I give me some of that because when I think of these things together, the way that at least I experience the LDS church to vilify pleasure, and I experience clinically, take away assertiveness or teach against assertiveness, and then disrupt secure attachments to self. My brain goes big because I have a sociology background. I go, okay, what's the point? The point is control. The point is, and then I go dark. I'm like, all right, we got lots of tithing money coming in. We got people spending an entire lifetime in free service. And they live in such a bubble that they don't even experience their own bodies fully.
Yeah.
So systemically, I think I'm really, like we talked about in consultation today, I think I'm very hard on systems. Mm-hmm. And although I love my LDS family, love my LDS clients, I do see so many issues here psychologically that like I think I shared this even in my last presentation that you were at for the association conference last year, that it feels very psychologically abusive.
Yeah.
From my lens.
Well, I would completely agree. It's psychologically abusive, and I appreciate the pushback. And I think I'm not pushing back on the pushback. I'm just going to try to explain how I see it.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Because I think
understand.
That, yeah. Well, I only have my experience, right? And I, for a while, I was a mother that did a lot of the things that a Mormon mother is supposed to do, which I now see as emotionally and psychologically abusive. So I was a psychological and emotional abuser.
Oh, me too. Right there with you. 100%.
Would I have ever thought that, at the time when I was still under this kind of worldview? And I would have been like so hurt and upset. And I would be like, I care about my children the most. I only do everything I do because I love them. Yep. And so it's kind of this weird thing that I think even as post-Mormons, we struggle holding the reality of these two things. We can get mad at this very, like system, this patriarchy, this church. And I think there are bad players in any community, that's for sure. So I'm not trying to just say, and I do think that there are a lot of bad player activities happening with this idea that there's a cause, like I can justify this bad thing that I already agree is bad. See, I don't think I really did that as a mom. I don't think I was like, yeah, I know this is really bad and I'm still going to do it because I'm justifying this better thing. I really thought everything I was doing was pretty good, but I don't want to ignore that there are people like that in these systems. But I guess when I think about a system itself is trying to survive, right? And so why would I have offered my children emotionally and psychologically abusive principles or teachings or behaviors? Was because for whatever reason, I thought those were protective factors, right? So and I think control is oftentimes misinterpreted as a protective factor.
Oh, absolutely.
I think I was absolutely trying to control my kids. And I think even as a Mormon mom, I would have said, well, yeah, of course, I can't just let them run out into the street. I've got to control them, And so I think we think of control. We don't think of control enough through enough lenses to really say, okay, well, what are we really talking about when we're talking about control? Because I think the Mormon church probably would say, they just said it. They just said, we're going to send young women out to the mission fields earlier than normal because we want to up the chances that they're going to marry on their missions and they're going to come home and have babies and be in a system that we have already decided is best for them. So we are going to be kind of controlling in this. We're going to control the narratives. We're going to control the environments to make these results the best, hopefully for us, or what we think is good for them. Right. And so I think a lot of people function in really abusive ways and really controlling ways. Yeah. That's my little 2-minute explanation. And you can totally lambaste me all you want.
No, I mean, I totally get it. I'm from a 10-person LDS family. My parents, 100% in, nieces, great nieces and nephews. Like I hear what you're saying, and I see that in my own mother's parenting of me, my own parenting of my children as a spouse. Oh my goodness, I was very shaming, very, very shaming, totally bought into just really unhealthy constructs within Mormonism, and did a ton of harm that I had to go back and repair. Yet when I look back at little Mellissa, 20-something-year-old Mellissa, I feel like for me and for many of my clients that, they're under the influence of something. And many people are being influenced and someone's controlling. There's puppeteer masters and there's people being influenced, people who are told and infused with fear to be the leader in their parenting, to take the lead in their parenting, to take the lead in what it means to be a spouse, which is to control and shame. And yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying, and I also have like 5 other ideas coming into my mind at the same time. And maybe here's the thing, right? When we leave Mormonism, we learn that it's maybe not about being right or wrong, because many of us are doing the best that we can. I think where I have experienced a shift over the last 5 years is like, I think that maybe not everybody is doing the best that they can, and that you and I are truly doing the best that we can. I know you are. I watch you do it. You're doing the best that you can. It's beautiful. But I don't think that everybody does the best that they can. I think that there are people in the world, and part of my growth as a human being as being accepting that not everybody wants what's best for others. Not everybody wants good things for others. Some people have decided, I'm not going to do the best that I can. I'm going to exploit. I'm going to say something that's going to keep that person small, or keep this group small.
Yeah.
And when it comes to women in the church, it's like clockwork.
Yeah, and this is where I tend to agree with you, and why I think before I would be much more pleasant to the patriarchy in some really stupid ways of like, oh, they're older, they don't know any better, they have their own worldview. And now I'm like, no, I need to hold you to a higher standard than that. You have way too much power and money and resources at your disposal to not be doing better. And plus we have a lot of older generation people who are phenomenal advocates. And I think of our own Carolyn Pearson. I think about Bernie Sanders. I think about, like so many people who are of age who did not get stuck in a worldview or an exploitative value system. And so I do think I'm with you on holding our leaders accountable. I think systems are very complex, and boy, our systems trying to keep the system running, right? Versus caring about the individuals within.
Yes. Yeah. When you say that, I think about my own parents, who are just literally some of the sweetest, kindest humans that I've met, who do want to do the best that they can. And the influence that they've been under is very strong. And I would say that it's separated them from 7 out of their 8 kids. It's heartbreaking. And it's not that it has separated them, because my parents are so open-hearted, and so like they're there, right? We see them, we engage with them, but there's a certain level of separation that hasn't been healed, because we can't go deeper. We can't get that far into our critical thinking or our own autonomy, because if we do that, that's dangerous. And so now I'm separated from my kids, my grandkids. I can't relate. I don't understand, and I don't want to either, because I've put up a wall. But they are the salt of the earth people. They truly are. If there's a celestial kingdom, they're going for sure. But are they under the influence, and has it hurt them from my perspective? Oh, if I could cuss on here, I would cuss, but
well, you can.
Absolutely. It has not benefited them in some of the ways that that I wish that it would. And then on the other side of things, it's like, okay, the church pulled my mom's whole family out of poverty. My dad was a bishop and he had this leadership role through his whole life. He had severe ADHD and didn't always function well in other systems, but within the church, he thrived and he wanted to do good things. And so there's like, it's always this mixed bag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One, I think swearing is part of healing. So it's always welcome on my show, not necessarily encouraged, but welcome.
I love it.
And second, I love that you're talking about influence, almost like being under the influence. We're so used to thinking about substances being under the influence of, substance instead of influence, right? And that is a substance in of itself. And it's so interesting, especially as I've gotten into helping people with ketamine, and there's lots of other people doing psychedelic work in other states. It's here in Utah we have primarily access to ketamine. But people oftentimes are like, well, but, I want to be sober. I want to be not under the influence. And I'm like, you are under the influence. Your sober brain, quote unquote, your sober brain is not a clear headed brain. From a very young age, you got all of these substances inserted. They were ideas, but they were big ideas that impacted your entire brain chemistry.
Oh, yeah.
What we're finding with psychedelic work is that it reveals some of that. It kind of takes some of those cobwebs away and reveals what's underneath all of that substance abuse that you got through idea substances. So that's kind of a new thing I've been kicking around.
I love that.
Yeah. Like don't always trust your sober brain.
I love that. Relating that to my own ketamine experiences. I've done a few CAP sessions as an individual. I love the way that you just described that to me. It's never been described that way, where it's like, no, you were under the influence of something that wasn't real before. Because sometimes I look back at those experiences, I'm like, wow, that was such a beautiful like fantasy that I'm going to return to and remember and take the strength from it. But this almost makes it feel like that's not a fantasy, that's reality. Like that is real. Like that is so powerful. So powerful. That just refreshed my whole therapeutic integration. Thank you.
All right. I love it. I'm here for it. And then 3, your point that just like most systems, even really shitty systems, you can still benefit from systems, So we were a military family. We definitely benefited from having a Mormon, like chapel house in every place we moved, kind of instant family, instant friends, instant community. That was no small thing. That was no small thing. I
absolutely
give the church a lot of credit for my public speaking skills. I was a pretty shy kid and pretty introverted, but I became, kind of forced me out of my kind of shell and gave me a lot of opportunities for socializing and leadership roles and things like that. Even though we do have patriarchy still, women do at least get some experience with some leadership roles, which is not always the cases in all church communities. So there's these, pros and cons. And I think we do a better job healing when we can sit with all of it, Okay, so this is all lending to your second point, which is assertiveness, right? When we're talking about critical thinking, when we're thinking about how we can say, hey, I have an idea. Hey, I think something else matters, or I'm not sure I agree. And your sentence for this was, emotional disconnection and communal pressure creates a severe pattern of women lacking assertiveness, education, and capacity. And even as you were talking about your mom and your parents, like this comes to mind. So tell me more about this kind of sense of assertiveness and what you're thinking about when you're writing that.
It makes me think of getting needs met. Can we ask for our needs to be met? Can we take enough time to even know what our needs are? And remember, if pressure is vilified, we can't drop into our body. It's hard to know what our needs are or our wants. And so then how do you even ask for it? And I think when we're not in touch with that, we begin to sneakily get our needs met and do what we need to do to get our needs met. Because we're always going to have needs. That doesn't go away whether we're an LDS woman or not, or an LDS man or not. The needs, we're just a bunch of mammals. So we got to get those needs met, and we're going to get them met in creative ways. And usually that means a lot of passivity or passive aggressive kind of behavior where we're on the one hand letting the world like the church, right? Or others kind of take the wheel and take control of our lives. But we have got to figure out how to survive within that. And so that's where we do creative things to get our needs met.
Well, and even thinking about the porn dilemma, that we were just referring to, so many people turn to secrecy as a form of getting their needs met, right? So it's not safe to share this interest or to have certain wants or desires. And I'm not talking about just sexually now, but just in general. And so a lot of times, pornography, infidelity, any type of relationship with anything that from what we might consider good things like exercise or scrapbooking or things that we would say, oh, that's not so great, like substances or even overeating. They're all ways that we are attending to needs, and whether or not they've been deemed healthy or appropriate by our society, and whether or not they're actually causing harm, so like the porn thing isn't really causing harm unless you believe it causes harm as far as the viewing of it. I'm not talking about the production of it. That's a whole nother, I'm talking about ethical porn usage. So, ethical porn usage isn't really causing harm unless you believe it's causing harm.
Right.
And then it causes a ton of harm.
Right. Especially for the men that are believing that they're causing themselves harm. Right. And then the spiral begins. And then the harm that it causes wifey is excruciating and so valid. And both of us are in pain, but completely separate from one another. And by the way, neither one of them get needs. However, women, we are allowed to have needs of the law of chastity, right? You do have to live the law of chastity. So that's where that intense shaming comes in, right? I do have the ability to tell my bishop on you. I do have the ability to shame you when you tell me that you looked at porn. I have the ability to know every time that you look at porn or every time that you masturbate. And I feel like we kind of really lean into that power when we get it as hurt Mormon women. We really lean into that because we're desperate.
Well, and it's one of the only powers LDS women have.
Yeah.
Is that kind of power to say I'm being more, if within the system I come across as more righteous, I can use that righteousness as a wielding of power big time. And I can understand why women take it. I don't even consider themselves. I mean, I do think there's abusive factors in there, but again, they're being taught to act. It's kind of like me. I was being an abusive mother, but it's how I was taught to mother. It's not because I myself was an abusive person. But we are taught these very controlling ways of being with our most loved ones. And if you can't put up with my control, then that has all these other meanings. Like you don't love me, you're not worthy, you're not good for us, you're destroying our family, instead of really looking underneath to what is actually happening, which is so interesting when this isn't a dilemma, that it doesn't cause all these problems for other people. So that's kind of like an artificial. Then I say, okay, there are things that it doesn't matter what religious background you come into. If you have an unhealthy relationship with cocaine, for example, that's more than likely it's going to mess up huge aspects of your life, regardless of anybody's shaming you or not. That particular substance is not meant to be used on a regular basis.
Right. It's very, very chemically altering. Yeah. It's interesting as we talk about the wife situation and the wife seat that we're talking about. That sounds like aggression. It's not assertiveness. That's us being aggressive, because when we're aggressive, we are controlling, we're making something happen. So if we are managing our partner's phone like they're our child, or, just kind of hyper fixating on their behaviors, we're being more of an aggressive person at that point. We're not being assertive. And we don't want to be aggressive. We want to be assertive. And assertiveness means taking full ownership for what you want, which, by the way, we're going to have a hard time getting to if we cannot experience pleasure.
Or if we're not allowed to be human. Right? Because that's the other problem, is that I mean, oftentimes an LDS woman or a Mormon woman or a Catholic woman, lots of women would say, well, I don't want a partner who looks at erotic materials. I don't want that. And that's your right. And you know, I always tell people that's your right to not want certain things in a partner. And yet, if that list becomes so punitive, you're going to
Right.
have a hard time humaning with another human.
Yeah.
And yet, that is so. I do like this idea of aggressiveness versus assertiveness. And even an assertion, when you say, this is what I want,
Mm-hmm.
how are those wants being influenced by who? And have you thought about what those wants entail? And especially what they entail as far as your expectations of how other people are supposed to show up in your life. You know, like I
Yeah.
want I want all my kids to be college educated. Well,
Mm-mm.
at
It
what
doesn't
point
work.
does that not
Yeah.
become you can't really now we're getting more into those control tactics, right? And
Right. Yeah, that doesn't work. I feel like it's more about defining the life that you are creating for yourself. Being assertive is about your own responsibility
mhm,
for your own life. It's not about what other people do. And I feel like when we're passive, we've let go of the reins of our own life, and now we're just kind of floating wherever life takes us. But because we're human, we end up having dysfunctional patterns to get our needs met because
mhm.
those won't go away.
Yeah. Whereas I see assertiveness more following the same storyline as well, I may be uncomfortable with how your individual sexuality shows up, and I may not want to participate in all the things that you're interested in because that doesn't match my erotic template or
Mm-hmm.
my erotic pleasure or my erotic
Mm-hmm.
values. So I'm going to piece out on some of those things that maybe you would prefer for me to be partnered with you on. That to me, that's more
Mm-hmm.
assertiveness versus
Yes.
somebody else's
Yes.
behavior and expecting.
Within, yeah, the lens of sexuality, absolutely. It's like, this is what I want. This is what I don't want. What are my internal boundaries? I want to participate in this with you, but I don't want to participate in this with you. And both partners, all partners in the relationship need to be able to have that
Mhm. Yeah.
100%. And I think that that really comes from a core belief that our sexuality is for it's ours, which is also very hard to get to when pleasure is vilified. So it just creates, there's so many blocks, starting with that pleasure block early on.
Well, right. I mean, if you're given the message that from age 3 or 4, when you're touching your own little vulva or penis, that now God is unhappy with you and you're doing something really wrong, even though we know that's like an absolutely natural, normal soothing tool for little kids to
Mm-hmm.
touch their genitals, just like they would suck their thumbs or pull their ears or have a blankie. You are very early on letting people know that we have to control things about ourselves and others in order to be accepted instead of leaning into what we actually want. And
Mm-hmm.
just why I go back even to the sober brain is really messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It
we
is.
have all these downloads that were not were not placed in us biologically. The only thing that was placed in
Mm-hmm.
us biologically was the survival to was the very inert instinct to survive, and knowing that in order to survive, because we can't do it alone, I have to make sure this group takes
Mm-hmm.
care of me.
Mm-hmm.
I need that group to take care of me in our little mammal lifespan for at least like 15 to
Yeah.
25 years, depending on where
Mm-hmm.
you're at, and so that's a long time for a lot of those downloads to
Yeah.
be usurping your own self authority.
Mm-hmm. And so survival means uh, it's my fault. It can't be their fault. They have to be safe. My adult attachments, they have to be safe. My brain can't conceptualize that my parents aren't safe, especially as an 8-year-old, right? So if something's wrong, whose fault is it? It's mine. If I get slapped in the face by my parent, whose fault is it? It's mine. If I have this weird urge to touch my own vulva when I'm falling asleep, and I'm told that that's yucky and disgusting and bad, then there's something really wrong with me. You know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Which
being able to be okay with our needs, to be
Mhm.
okay with being a human, like you said.
And being okay like offering that to the other people in our lives, that they are also going to human and they're going to have similar and different needs and desires than we have. And how do we all sit with that complexity? And that's, where the term differentiation comes in, which is now we're talking about Boolean family structure models, and it's like, how do we sit with the anxiety of us being different and yet wanting the same thing, which is emotional safety and connection.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, this all lends really well to your third point, which is secure attachment to self, right? And there's a lot of theories that kind of talk about this, from IFS to attachment theory to other things. But this idea that I can be, that I'm not so anxiously engaged with others that I don't have a sense of self. I'm just trying to chase like what everybody else wants me to be, which, we can talk about, the term codependence or the term like people pleasers, like there's lots of terms that kind of relate to this kind of an idea. So talk to us about how important the sense of self is.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, in a lot of high control structures, our sense of self is um, at some point, to use a term that's simplistic, hijacked by whatever it means to be that system. So I think that there's an identity kind of friction happening here where um, if I'm listening to the spirit, but I'm not listening to myself, if I'm listening to my bishop, but I'm not listening to myself, if I'm listening to my husband, but I'm not listening to myself, our relationship with ourself deteriorates and we don't trust ourselves and we experience mental health symptoms like anxiety or depression or chronic illness, even. Um, and so, in the high control system specifically, it's interesting. It's not always people, it's not always just like insecure attachment, like, I'm going to reach out to my partner before I go inward, or I'm going to get my security from these places. It's I'm going to get my security from this thing. And this thing becomes it's dysfunctional when it's at the center of us because it's not, so nothing should be at this, and I hate to use a should. Let me check that.
I know, I'm always trying to catch my shoulds.
Our relationship with ourselves, the most true rooted version of ourselves, seems to get it doesn't seem like, I've seen this over and over again. It gets very, very foggy. I don't trust myself. I'm afraid of myself. At the root of me, I'm natural. And what's natural is bad, maybe hedonistic.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's really hard to have that relationship of, I can handle today without this thing. This thing becomes so invasive.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's so ironic here, I don't even know how to totally explain this without getting so philosophical, I get lost in my own words, but we don't find the self by ourselves. We are pack animals through and through. So
Absolutely.
even this idea that I think, even we've been talking a lot about influence, and influence is a part of life, right? So we are going to be influenced. The idea is more like what kinds of influences, right? Are we being influenced by systems that honor self? Are we being, influenced by systems that have a place for self-determination, that allow for people to celebrate who they happen to be? Or, systems who are like, oh, no, that part of yourself is very scary. We're uncomfortable with it. So you better put that part of yourself away, which is typically what we're talking about in high demand systems, is that the demand is high to conform to the group. And it doesn't have a lot of lenience towards how individuals show up uniquely within that group. So if you're going to heal and get more of a secure attachment with self, what you actually need to do is have a secure attachment with people who are aware and honoring of that. And that's why, of course, a lot of people may do that with a therapist. And that's why I get so mad at religiously biased therapists who get in the way of exactly that that we're supposed to be offering, right? Is that kind of judgment-free space that we can look at your values, and it's not moral-free space, but it's judgment-free space to really have more healthier principles from a systemic viewpoint. So what are your thoughts about that?
I love it. I think that that's one of those things that makes us so beautifully human, is that we need one another, and this gets in the way of connection. How do we authentically connect to another person when we don't know what we want, when we don't know what it feels like to be in our own body? How do we create healthy groups, social groups, when we're disconnected from ourselves? We're so disconnected from ourselves because of something that isn't human, and isn't, maybe like you said, more rooted in what was there when we were two, when we were more free. I 100% agree. We can't heal without people. But that high level of differentiation, to say, I see you and you're safe here to show me who you are, and then I choose to love you for who you are. And it's okay if you're very different from me. In fact, it benefits our group that you are different from me. And that's what high control systems lack, like we talked about.
Yeah. So, because I hear a lot of people, and especially in the United States culture where we are more individualistic, saying, well, I need to love myself before anybody else can love me. And I'm like, you're never going to learn to love yourself until you find people who love you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very true. Like we desperately need each other, which is concerning right now. I feel like we're more isolated somehow. So many of the humans are so isolated right now. And it's confusing for me, because we're so connected. Yeah, we're so isolated.
Technology to connect us, and yet we get stuck in our own little group thinks, I think, much quicker, unfortunately, in these kinds of spaces. And there's a lot of kind of faux human connection through watching other people live lives, from anything from watching a TV sitcom, which was much more normal 10 years ago, to now just scrolling and
TikTok
through like 3 second, if you aren't interested in about 3 seconds, you're going on to the next thing. So that time frame of, and then it's not actual connection because it's just
right
other people. It's not actually
right
having a mirroring experience with that person. So yeah, we're really struggling in this time frame.
We really are. I think about that kind of almost artificial connection. And I think about the out of control sexual behaviors, which, anyone who might be LDS listening to this might be thinking, about porn addiction, calling it porn addiction. But it's the lack of connection. And if we're more invested in the connection with the screen, whether it's TikTok or porn, than we are in the actual human connections around us, because that takes more work. It takes more work to get out and go to a meetup group or to go on a date, and it's more difficult to do. But if we get lost in the virtual and artificial connection, I think we're not getting what we need as mammals. Or we could use it as a tool, right, to connect. I think of so many beautiful connections that I have made through Instagram and through dating apps, and like so many beautiful connections, but it has to be so intentional. Like it has to be an intentional tool so that we can heal in community.
Yeah, I just was invited to a wonderful storytelling event last night, and about 20 women gathered and just had 5 minutes to tell their story about their lives. And it was so incredibly touching. We laughed, we cried, we contemplated. Some of it was philosophical, some of it was just hilarious. Some of it was very tender, and it just reminded me. And they were being very intentional, and they were like, we're inviting you now to go and create a space like this now for 10 to
Oh,
15 women that you know. And so
that's cool.
that like an interesting way to kind of get us, through. I mean, we're
Mhm.
living in kind of some pretty
Yeah.
tumultuous times right now, especially in the US of A politically, and
Mhm.
lots of social justice issues, which I know have been around forever. And yet
Mhm.
there
Yeah.
does seem to be a backfire effect of some sort that is very, very concerning right now,
Yeah.
especially for, people in the margins. And so it's how do we, sometimes it feels so hopeless. And I think that was one of their points last night was we can gather, we can
Yep.
gather, we can converse, we can laugh, we can cry. And that is at
Yeah.
the base of probably the biggest human power we have.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I've been telling my clients when we're having these days where I get to the office and some horrible thing, some horrible, horrific thing that I just saw and my client just saw. And we're experiencing this together real time, which is so tricky, for us as therapists. Like we don't perform the best when we're going through what our client's going through at the same time. Um, and that's my go-to is like, hey, I don't know right now. Let's just breathe together. Let's just be here together. Because if there's one thing that I do know is that we have each other and we have connections around us and other people that are feeling the same way. Um, I felt like that was kind of the message that we came out of our last MMHA conference with as well. I really felt so beautifully connected in that way. And kind of that carried me through a lot of my year of just, you know, right now, collectively, we don't have all the answers, whether you're a service provider or a client. We're walking through this together, but how beautiful that we do get to walk through it together.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, well, I know we're at the end of our time, so I want to really quickly kind of give you a chance to tell us a little bit more about this resource that you've created and where people can find that. I think you called it a faith
Oh, okay.
workbook. And
Yeah.
also maybe just give us your kind of final thoughts of what you hope people take away from having heard of you today.
Hmm. Um, well, as always, a girl has got to support her family. So I am definitely looking for Utah clients, which is very fun, very new. Actually, Natasha, you're my new supervisor. I just haven't booked with you yet.
Oh, that's
I got
exciting.
it all worked out with your assistant and everything, and I haven't booked it yet because I don't have any Utah clients yet, which is funny because I've always had multiple Utah inquiries, but I need to get on the marketing. I need to do something about this. So this was that today. So
Ah, okay.
I'm
If you're,
taking Utah clients.
yeah, if you're in Utah and licensed, and if you get a good vibe with Mellissa, by all means, she has some availability.
Yeah, yeah. There's that, and then also, I don't know. I think that this is really important. It's important for us to talk about this because so many of us are walking around like, um, 23-year-old Mellissa was walking around. A queer woman with two kids already and miserable and confused and so out of alignment. Um, and even if I would have had a few of these principles, even within the system, I think I would have been a lot more healthy. So that's why I talk about this just on any platform like the one that we use today. In terms of the resources that I offer for people, clients, the Faith Transition Journal is available on Amazon, and they can get to that through my website, which will be listed, I'm sure, or my social media. There's links there for it. It's pretty easy to find. It's actually, fun fact, my kids and I, that was a project that we actually did together. So it is not scholarly, it's a journal. There's art and quotes. It's very uplifting. It's very girly. It's very feminine. And it was actually also a cool teaching and learning experience with me and my kiddos who also transitioned out of Mormonism. So there's that.
Okay.
Um, that for clients. Then we also have, we run different groups here at Inner Compass. Ashley, who is a therapist who works with me, she sees men and is Mormon informed, specializes in ethical Mormon care and men's issues specifically, but she sees Arizona clients. For therapists, we have a Facebook group that helps promote ethical Mormon-informed care that you can get to through my website, through my Instagram as well. We could link that maybe. We also do a lot of local community events here in Arizona for clinicians and service providers. And what else? Oh, consultation. I offer consultation as well on religious trauma, specifically to other clinicians. I think that's everything.
Okay. And why don't you just at least say your website name out loud so people can actually hear it here? And that way, some people are good at remembering, others will have.
Yeah, not me, but some people. It's pretty simple. It's www.inner-compass-counseling.com. And there's lots of podcasts, there's education on there that I have created in partnership with many people around the valley here, many like the Mormon Mental Health Association. There's lots of listening, many hours of listening there. And all of these resources are listed there. Also, all the facts for our practice. If you have questions about rates or about anything else, that will all be there. I think it's really important for people to understand that although I'm pretty tough on systems, I am not anti-religion. I respect what religion is. I understand that we are humans and we will always create religions. And I'm very supportive of people wherever they are on their journey. And I've helped many active LDS people and also post-LDS people. Basically, nuance is what we hold very well here at Inner Compass, and the goals of the client in their mental health.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would still be a member of the church if they hadn't kicked me out, more than likely. So I was trying to, be kind of a force of shifts and changes from within a system that it was like family to me. There's a lot of things in family systems that are problematic or that we want to improve.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean we want to leave the family altogether or be kicked out of the family, although some people choose to do those things, which is fine too. But I agree that it's important people understand that even though we can critique aspects of our religious communities, we also hold a lot of love and work really well with people who are still a part of those religious communities. I love working with mixed faith couples. I know many of us do that work. I'm sure you do that work, Mellissa, and mixed faith families and all kinds of things. It's that differentiation piece. I appreciate you bringing that out.
Yeah.
Just because we are critical doesn't mean we still don't want to work within folks within the system, and we'll value your space in that. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm always so thankful. I know how busy therapists are, and also that your time is money and energy, and here you are freely giving it to my audience. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. Looking forward to supervision work with you, and I'm sure I'll see you at MMHA again. So we'll have a lot.
Natasha, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful to be able to rub shoulders with you and to be able to learn and grow professionally in this space. I'm so grateful. So thank you so much.
Welcome. And I'm very grateful for the role that you're playing in so many people's lives and the organization that I helped to found. So thank you so much. So have a great rest of your week. And for all of you who are listening, I hope that you learned something or got some insights about something, and all the links that we talked about, including to my links as well, will be on the show notes. So thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional Facebook page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can also find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The information shared on this program is informational and should not be considered therapy. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality and may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer Podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
There is a place where time slows to nature's pace, and there is space there to find yourself in her embrace. Some places should be left alone. Naho tishki say the Navajo, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart. 10,000 years of our human history etched on her canyon walls, alongside Earth's mysteries. Some places should be left alone. Naho tishki say the Navajo, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart. Deep in our cities, we sleep without her stars, yet still her presence sustains us from afar. Some places should be left alone. Naho tishki say the Navajo, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart.